do we need anything?
You're good to go.
We're good to go. Okay, then I will call us to order. This is a public board meeting, the agenda for which is on the school district's website. Please be advised that our board meetings are recorded and live streamed on the school district's YouTube channel. The Board of Education acknowledges that we are on the traditional territories of the Comox First Nations. We would like to thank them for the privilege of living on their land and the gift of working with their children. Adoption of the agenda. Recommended that the Board of Education adopt the May 26, 2020 regular public board meeting agenda as presented. I need a mover.
Trustee Hawksby.
Thank you, Trustee Hawksby, and seconded by Trustee Howe. Any objection? Seeing none, move on to board minutes, meeting minutes, and that it's recommended that the Board of Education adopt the April 28th, 2020 regular public board meeting minutes as presented. Moved by Trustee Frawley, seconded by Trustee Waite. Any objection? Seeing none, it's passed. Recommendation that the Board of Education adopt the May 12th, 2020 Committee of the Whole meeting minutes as presented. Moved by Trustee Howe, seconded by Trustee Frawley. Any objections? Seeing none, it is passed. Old business. We have no old business. Report on in-camera. We had in-camera meetings on May 19th, and we had an in-camera meeting today on May 26th. Board Chair report is next. And I had 3 meetings that I attended in particular last week that I wanted to just bring everybody's attention to. The first was the IEC Standing Committee, the BCSTA Indigenous Education Standing Committee. We had our first meeting on May 20th since the committee was suspended by the Board of Directors for the BCSTA at the beginning of the COVID shutdown. So this was our first meeting since then. New members were introduced to the committee, and a subcommittee was struck to create an executive summary of the British Columbia Tripartite Educational Agreement. And it will be developed for boards to help school districts with useful information on this document and related documents of the United Nations Declaration on Indigenous People and the Truth and Reconciliation recommendations. The other meeting that I attended that I wanted to bring everybody's attention to was the VISTA Board Chairs meeting. In addition to the VISTA Board Chairs and some of the VISTA executive, board liaisons, Mike Murray and Jody Olstead were also present at the VISTA Board Chairs meeting on May 21st. Each board chair gave an update and shared out their planning for the restart. Of particular note was the acknowledgement and deep appreciation to our senior staff from the board chairs of districts to the north and south of us for all of our senior staff's assistance in helping those boards with the development of their restart plans. Truly an example of we are all being in this together and how we are all working together on many of the same problems and concerns, i.e. things such as the supply chain issues. The last meeting that I wanted everyone to be aware of that I attended last week was the BCSTA Board Chairs meeting on May 22nd. There was an update on international education. They're looking for federal support, in particular around student visa applications from international students, as that's a stumbling block for them presently, and thus it's a problem for many districts as far as getting international students to return. So they're working with our federal counterparts at this time, but there's no resolution at the moment. PPE. And that was a discussion around, have we ever used that term before? And now it's used constantly. There has been no change in the health and safety guidelines following Dr. Tam's announcement last Wednesday. And PPE for our staff is very limited because there's still not enough for frontline staff in hospitals, et cetera. So PPE is still an ongoing problem and issue, and again, an aspect of the supply chain problems. There will be a board chair's Zoom call this week with the Minister of Education and Dr. Corneal. Dr. Corneal is a specialist from the Interior with public health, and he will be answering trustees' questions around restart and COVID-19. If, however, trustees have any questions that they would like me to ask Dr. Corneal or the Minister, Minister Fleming, I would ask that you have them to me, the questions to me by Thursday, if possible, please. Questions to the Minister must be sent to him in advance, beforehand, with only questions for Dr. Corneal being asked live at the time of the Zoom call meeting. Those are 3 meetings that I had back-to-back last week, and that's my report out on them. Superintendent DeMaio.
Yes, I just wanted to also mention that at the BCSTA IEC Standing Committee meeting, Chair Hargraves was nominated and elected co-chair of the BCSTA IEC Standing Committee. So congratulations to our chair for that appointment.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, everyone. On to there is no presentations or delegations tonight. There was no Education Committee meeting in May. The next is strategic direction, and I will turn it over to our superintendent at this time.
Thank you. So moving in, the majority of our time as a senior staff has been spent the last little while preparing for our stage 3 return plan. And what I've asked today is we're going to give you a little bit of an update from the operations side of it, so we can hear from the things that have gone on behind the scenes, an update in terms of our planning. As many of you know, we initially made a request to the ministry to approve a K-7 plan, and rather than the K-5, 6-12. So we'll give you an update on that. But first, what I'd like to do is I really want to share, I think sometimes a picture is worth 1,000 words. And I would really like to share a video that our communications director has created for us. And Mary, if you can share this with everyone. Superintendent of Schools for School District 71. Planning to return to in-class instruction here in the Comox Valley has taken a great deal of collaboration with our educational partners. We are able to reopen our schools as a result of the hard work and dedication of all our staff. We would also like to thank the Comox District Teachers Association and CUPE 439 for their continued partnership.
So I think what the teachers would like the parents and students to know is that we've missed you, and we are really excited to be able to see you again. We've all been working together to try to make everything as positive and healthy and safe as can possibly be with all the things we know. And we hope that when you come back, you're going to be coming with a smile too, and knowing that everybody has your best interests at heart.
First Student is our contracted busing company for School District 71. To ensure buses are safe for student riders, First Student will clean and disinfect buses in accordance with the directions stated in the BC Centre for Disease Control. Student riders will have their own seat. Children living in the same household may share a seat. Because Because of the limited seating on the bus, we ask parent and caregivers, if it's possible, to drop their child off at school and pick up children from school at the end of the day. Sorry, moms and dads. All adults who do not work in our schools are asked to stay in their cars. Non-school staff are not permitted to enter our schools. If you need to enter the school, please call ahead and make arrangements with the school principal. This will help reduce the risk of potentially spreading any germs.
Our custodian and maintenance staff have been hard at work with all the contact surface cleaning and the enhanced cleaning at night to make everything safe for the return of everybody for learning. We've actually gone through extensive training through our joint occupational health and safety. All staff will be trained prior to entering into the schools, and that training will funnel down to the students.
Students will gather outside of their school at the start of each day. Remember, no hugs for now. We can show our kindness to each other in many ways, such as a smile, a wave, or making a heart gesture with your hands.
Educators are quite excited that students will be coming back and you're going to be welcomed with a great big smile. We've definitely missed you. We've missed the sounds of children in the hallways.
Everyone that enters the school needs to wash their hands with soap. Teachers will guide each class to one of the hand washing stations in the school. We will follow the school district guidelines for hand washing by wetting hands first with water, applying soap, rubbing hands for 20 to 30 seconds, and patting hands dry with a paper towel. The paper towel will then be used to turn off the tap before throwing it away. Staff will follow the 2-meter or 6 feet social distancing rule with other staff.
Your classrooms are going to look very different than when you left before spring break. So what hasn't changed is how much the support staff, the teachers, the principals, and even the senior leaders that you don't usually see, how much we all care for you and welcome you back.
When we are in school, staff and students will follow the rule of half. Class sizes are reduced in half. Children will be organized into smaller groups to minimize direct physical contact. And teachers will increase the amount of outdoor time for learning activities, recess, and lunch. Good news! Playgrounds and big toy structures will reopen and can be used again once schools reopen.
And that's really what's been going on behind the scenes with the teachers union and management and with the CUPE. We're all in this together.
Welcome back, everyone.
Thank you to our manager of communications, Mary Lee, and the rest of the staff that worked on that video. So that'll be released later on this evening and into tomorrow, and away it goes. So thank you. In preparation, so that sort of summarizes a lot of the work, but there's been additional work. So what I'd like to do is ask our Director of Operation, Ian Hesselgrave, to give us an overview of some of the things that are happening behind the scenes and continue happening, and probably will right up until Friday in preparation for Monday. So Director Hesselgrave.
Okay, thank you, Tom. There has been a lot of work over the last, really it's 2.5 months. And, you know, I think it's best that we structure it around the fact that we started out with the establishment of some protocols, which have morphed significantly over the last few months and on a week-to-week basis. The protocols, working with the manager of health and safety, who's part of the operations department, he worked very closely with Director of Instruction for Health and Safety, Paul Berry. And out of those protocols, it really drove us in a couple of directions, one being procedural changes in schools and then physical changes. So physical changes, things like us putting in sneeze guards in a few places to and we put them in selective locations where physical distancing can't be achieved. Signage, everything from directional signage on the floors of schools to signage outside the schools, health check areas. And then procedural changes are focused around staff. Like if you think of, you saw one of our custodians cleaning all the chair legs, that's the kind of thing, and chair seats that we would do in the summer, but not on a regular basis. But we are now into enhanced cleaning protocols. So we've completely modified our cleaning protocols such that every day we do enhanced cleaning. So that means a lot of extra touch point cleaning and high traffic areas. And we have a day custodian. The day custodians are now, there's one in every elementary school and two in every secondary school. And they work closely with administration and around the school plan for a day to ensure that they can help the teachers with that touch point cleaning and deal with any situations that come up during the day. So we've really had to kind of modify our practices in a really significant way. I think the other thing that's been a big deal for us has been trying to stay ahead of the supply chain. Is that we knew early on that there'd be real challenges around the hot commodities, and that in particular hand sanitizer and cleaning supplies and cleaning equipment. We got in early on some, and we've worked with a lot of our local suppliers, and we've probably made way more online orders than we ever thought we would, that Amazon would become a significant supplier to the school district, to the operations department. It was a complete surprise to me, but we've had some good success and certainly a few heartbreaks when big shipments of stuff that we had coming were held back and returned at the border. So we, if you think about the hundreds of classrooms in the district and our requirement to ensure kids have the ability to clean their hands, we've really focused on ensuring that we have hand sanitization available for every classroom. That could be out in the hallway, that could be a sink in the classroom, or that could be a shared sink in the hallway. And the other part of it is having some strategically located cleaning supplies through the school for day-to-day use, which is something we would never do before. So we're having to really think through that. So how do we keep some of these products that are a bit noxious safe and secure, yet available for use? So we're having we're having to really come up with a lot of new protocols on the go. And certainly on the supplies front, we're essentially ahead enough that we can open, but it's still ongoing. We probably picked up 100 liters of hand sanitizer today, and we have one staff member on our custodial team that delivers supplies every day and fills hand sanitizing stations. We're also doing a lot of one-time use of bottles in the past are now being reused and cleaned in between, which is kind of stuff we never would have done before. So there's some interesting fallout of this as we move forward, because it gives us a way to think about how we can maybe generate a little less waste. I think the final thing that's been really big for operations is busing. How do we get around the physical distancing restrictions that were originally in place that maybe had us with 8 or 10 kids on a bus, to the fortunately some easing of the rules, and what you saw in the video where we have a child in every seat. They can't be in the row directly behind the driver, and the back row in most of our buses only has one seat, so we have to be a bit cautious around that as well. But we're now at sort of half capacity, which, given what we're looking at in June with a half capacity return, we're fine. But we're having to manage this process very carefully. The other piece of it is special needs busing, which not a lot of people think about. Esther and I have had a lot of communication on that, and every family of a special needs student has been reached out to see if they're coming back and they need a ride. And we are keeping all of our routes going. There's a certain continuity and consistency that's really important, and we're trying to keep the same drivers in attendance and schedule for those kids, and we're accommodating all of them. I think the other piece of the busing that's been really important is that we've supported First Student and their staff through this pandemic, and they have in return worked for us in other ways. They supported Quinish students, vulnerable learners, in our trials of busing, and they've really supported Lush Valley in the delivery of food. And, the good news is with the full return to busing, we're still able to support Lush Valley for delivery meals and other foods throughout the month of June, which is just great news, I think, for the district and for the community. So those are really 4 areas that have been a big focus for us. We're going to be, frankly, we'll be working right up until the last minute, probably on Sunday, to ensure all the schools are ready. But I've been in an awful lot of schools in the last week or two, and it's really been great to see the transformation and to see the change in kind of staff's understanding as well as of what's happening. So that's us, Tom.
Thank you very much, Director Hasselgrave. So moving forward, we initially, you may recall, we put a plan forward to the ministry to try to allow us permission to include our grades 6 and 7s into our K-5 plan. And we were given some initial approval to go ahead into that direction. We were requested to submit something late last week, on Friday of last week, for a final approval from the minister. And in that time, of course, our planning, we had indicated to our community that this was our intent. However, we needed final approval. Well, it's unfortunate to report that on Sunday afternoon, I received an email from the ministry indicating that they did not approve our K-7 plan, and they wanted us to remain at the K-5 plan for returning 2 days a week, and our grade 6s and 7s must only have the 1 day return. I expressed our dissatisfaction with the response. I further requested a meeting with the deputy minister, which I had on Monday morning, tried to explain again the notion, because of our grade configurations in our district that aren't consistent, this made the most educational sense. We supported it with documentation around the number of split classes. We presented every educational reason we could find as to why we felt this was the right direction to go in. Unfortunately, we're part of a bigger system, and for consistency purposes across the province, the ministry has asked that we remain K-5. So our schools have adjusted and have made some alternate plans for the 6s and 7s to go back to 1 day a week. And what I'd like to do is ask our director, Alan Douglas, to share an outline basically of our K-5, what it will look like, as well as 6 and 7. And then I'm going to ask our assistant superintendent, Jeff Manning, to share a little bit about the 8 to 12 programming that'll occur starting on Monday. So, Director Douglas.
Thank you, Tom. First of all, as Tom said, we really wanted to do this K-7 because of the different configurations in our elementary schools. But when I was on the radio last week, I said I will focus on the K-5 and explain what that would look like, because it was very much as I described the K-7. So our very first thing we did was survey our parents. How many are coming back to school, so we could get an idea, because our rule is the rule of half. So if the class could have 26 students in it before, now it can have 13. If the primary classes had 20, now it can have 10. So once we get the number of students that are coming back to school and returning, we also had to find out from those numbers how many are ESWs, children, essential workers. How many are part of our vulnerable school population? Because those children are entitled to come to school 5 days a week. So once we know what the numbers are, we took our students and we divided them into 2 groups, an A group and a B group. The A group children will come to school this Monday and Tuesday. If they're an essential worker, they will come Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. The B group will come Thursday and Friday. And on Wednesday, teachers will work on the continuity of learning with the home learners on Wednesday. And our students that are there on Wednesday as ESWs and vulnerable learners, they will be programmed by some of our non-enrolling teachers and our educational assistants. The plan for our 6-7s was very similar to what I've just said, except they're only entitled to come to school 1 day a week. So again, we'll be dividing them into 2 groups. Once we find out how many there are, Group A will come 1 day of the week. Group B will come 1 day of the week. Teachers will be expected to be there to provide support and service for those ESW students and the vulnerable students throughout the week, as well as the home learners. We've sort of outlined to parents that things will be a little bit different when you come to school. So parents will be dropping their children off with their teachers out on the playground, as you saw in the video. Teachers will be bringing the children in on a staggered entry through the building into the classroom. When they come into the school, there'll be signage on the floors, just like you're seeing in all the stores, telling us how we move through the building. Hand washing stations. Everybody will be washing their hands when they come in, washing their hands when they go out, washing them throughout the day. And at the end of the day, teachers will take the children outside to the same area that parents drop them off in the morning for pickup. We're really trying to limit the number of adults in the building. But of course, if any parent wants to come in, they can call the school and make arrangements. Now, as I've said to parents, it's voluntary. It's optional. If you want to send your children back, we'd love to have them. If you're not sure you want to send them back this Monday, you want to wait and see, wait and see. If you decided that on Wednesday or Thursday, you've changed your mind and you want to send them to school, call the school principal and they'll make arrangements for you to come to school. So our goal is to get as many children back into school that want to come and to provide a great service for them. If I can go just a little further, if I could, Tom, I want to let you know that our biggest challenge, of course, for the last 6 weeks has been childcare and providing childcare for our frontline workers, because most childcare services in the Valley closed. The early learning centers, the big ones, Beaufort, Tigger 2, they are just starting to kickstart, reopen in a limited way. We're very pleased with that. We Care, Boys and Girls Club, Bounce, Quinish, the one up in Miracle Beach, they're all starting to have discussions and get their staff back about opening for providing before and after school care for our children that are coming to school. So things are starting to come together quite nicely, and we will hopefully see lots of children in our schools on Monday. Any questions? I'm happy to answer them. Sheila?
Yes, Trustee McDonald.
I'm just interested in, quite the puzzle in terms of the, earlier you had said that we have about half. It indicated an interest in coming back, but how evenly is that spread? Do you have schools where there are much higher than half wanting to come and creating extra problems, or some schools where fewer than half are coming? And are you able to reassign teachers to our teacher return concerns are also in the picture? So I guess you're probably working directly with the principals, of course, on this, who know their school students really well, but how even was the spread? Are there any particular anomalies that are sort of interesting or creating extra challenges for you?
Sure. I'll turn it over to Alan and Jeff, who looked at the numbers with the schools.
So first of all, what's really interesting, Sheila, is every principal gave us their plan. So once they knew who was coming back, they gave us the number for each division that were coming back, and we could take a look at that. In that number, we were also given the ESWs that were part of that number. We were giving the vulnerable students that were part of that number. And Jeff and I thought that we might find a few that just wouldn't work. But to date, in elementary, we haven't found any that we don't think there's a workaround. Like, we do have non-enrolling teachers in the school that can help. We do have EAs in the school that can help. So you've got to remember, you're going to have about half the kids, but you have all of the staff still there if they all return. And we're working through some of those challenges. There are some, the superintendent and director of HR articulated a wonderful process for people who don't feel they can come back to work. There's a process that they have to go through. So we're working through that as well. Jeff, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I just say, like, great question, Sheila. And surprisingly enough, it almost worked out so that all the schools were about the same. We had two anomalies, and if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. And those were at Puntledge and Robb Road, where a much higher percentage of students were coming back. And if you think about the language acquisition programs that they run, parents were probably a lot more concerned about losing that language acquisition and wanting to get their kids in for a dose before summer hit. So both of those schools came in quite a significantly higher than half, but all the rest were probably right at the halfway mark.
So all the plans the schools have shared look really good. As well, the challenge, of course, is to continue supporting our online learners and those families that choose to remain online. And the challenge that we've tasked our principals to work with staff is we want to ensure our teachers and their support staff, no one is working more than 1.0. And so we've come up with ways of trying to dedicate a part day. There's going to be some changes in programming from what they've been used to the beginning of March to now, just to accommodate the numbers and the different ways that they need to deliver the curriculum now. So there's a few things that are happening, and I think they're working through it with their staffs, and we're getting to what I think will be a good step forward. Trustee Wade.
How many questions have we had from parents about the before and after school childcare, and how is that impacting if they want to send their children to school but without the before and after school childcare, then they can't work, or like how many of those puzzle pieces do we have, and what kind of timeline do we have with our before and after school childcare folks to see if they will be ready at some point in June, or how does our partnership work?
Sure. Good question, Alan. And I know Director Douglas has been working on this, was working on it today. So maybe I can get you to give us an update on that, Alan.
Yeah, sure. So I've probably had 3 or 4 direct calls. But when we served notice about 10 days ago, as soon as we found out we were going back to school on June 1st, and we needed to close those school-age childcare centers because we needed those people to actually come work in our schools. We served notice to all the people that were in the childcare centers. And so they immediately, those that didn't have plans, phoned me or emailed me to say, do you know if you can get WeCare to open? Do you know if you can get Bounce to open? And I said, yeah, we're working on that. So we've been continuing to encourage, because we only lease space to them. They're not our employees. We don't operate the facilities. However, they've been wonderful to work with. And as I said earlier, many of them have given me every indication that they will be, in all likelihood, able to open in that first week of June. Maybe not the first day, but they will. But a number of people, that's what they're looking for. They want that seamless entry. Drop my children off at school before I go to work. They go to before school, go to school, go there after school. I pick them up on my way home. So that's what we're trying to do, is to get it up and running for them. And I think we're going to be pretty successful.
And if I could ask our assistant superintendent, sorry, did I cut you off, Trustee Wade? I ask our assistant superintendent, Jeff Manning, to give us a brief overview of some of the things that are happening at secondary school.
Sure, thanks, Tom. First of all, a fantastic video. Thanks, Mary, for working so hard on that. But some of the things that you see in the video, it's a little bit different at secondary. So we are not going by the rule of half in secondary. We're following a rule of social distancing because the students are larger. So that's one main difference. And another main difference was alluded to this evening when we were talking about online learning. The secondary students have really been engulfed in online learning with a Canvas program that's set up at all of our main senior secondaries, and it's worked really well for the most part in those schools. Where it hasn't worked so well is in our alternate settings, and we've come up with some strategies to help solve that issue too. So maybe I'll speak to secondary in a phase approach. There were 3 main phases. The first phase that we thought about in secondary was we have to support our vulnerable learners. So they were contacted, a list of vulnerable students were come up with from every school, and they were contacted back in the middle of May and started actually attending secondary classes for a little bit of face-to-face between May 18th and May 29th. And then phase 2 was contacting what we considered vulnerable students at secondary, those that were in jeopardy of not being able to graduate. So those students were ascertained and they were contacted and began coming in to have some face-to-face. Now, next week is the big general call-in where all students will have the opportunity to come in for face-to-face instruction for 1 day a week. But similar to elementary, it is voluntary. Students or parents are not being forced to come in. It's only if they want to. And all the schools have set that up in a slightly different manner based on their schedules, size of their rooms, how they've set up their schools. But the online learning component is still going to continue at secondary for the 80% of their other instructional time. We think it's going to roll out just fine. Schools have put lots of plans in place. I did mention the alternate setting. We've got a slightly different plan in place where we're inviting those students back for more than 1 day a week, and that's because they are vulnerable learners. And under that guideline, they could come back for 5 days a week of instruction. So we've put that in place at Glacier View, where the principal has worked out a schedule to help try to push those students who are in jeopardy of not graduating and to push that envelope a little. So we're hoping that'll be successful. And really, I think overall, we're just kind of looking at, okay, how is this going to play out when the general population comes for their 1 day a week, and how are we going to manage that? And we've been meeting every week with our secondary people for updates. So it'll be interesting to see when we meet again on Friday, how ready they are to roll it out on Monday, but we feel very positive that they're ready to go. Did anybody have any specific questions around secondary? Looks like Janice and Sheila.
Sure. Sheila, are you?
Yeah, sure. Again, this is just making me really reflect on that thing about the grades 6s and 7s, and that our focus still at the secondary being with online learners. And we've, had so many opportunities with the grade 8s and 9s. Every one of those schools has been working on getting the basics of online learning into those students so that they're ready to do that type of work. And they have, I know that they, it's a topic of discussion at PAC meetings and the staff, and figuring out how to scaffold so that in grade 8 they learn project-based. They're starting to get more of that and work independently, and they're ready to do it. And I mean, I know we have some of that happening in the schools in grade 6 and 7, but not a lot, not the same degree. And so I do not understand the ministry's rationale. If you have a district willing to include those kids in even 2 days a week, it's not a lot, but that just, I'm having a lot of trouble with the rationale. So I think that what you described for the secondary makes so much sense, but I feel that for most learners, the online piece at grade 6, 7 is still challenging for them and for their parents. So, it's too bad the ministry has not taken up your great offer on that.
Yeah, we agree.
Yeah,
and we weren't alone, by the way. There were 7 other districts that made application, and we had heard that some of our bigger districts in the province, who are actually K-7 as well, Vancouver and Surrey, had also indicated they would like to, but so yeah, I think there's a lot of us in that situation, and we'll have to do it. Janice?
Okay, so I guess I was going to tag on to what Sheila was saying. I'm really disappointed in the fact that the Ministry of Education chose not to support our district along with other districts with the K-7. But I guess my question is more about the assessment part of it. And as we go through, and I'm not sure this is maybe not the right part, but you talk about secondary students and going through line, is how that assessment process is going to happen. At the end of the day, how are we going to assess them where they meet or not meet expectations? And I guess that's the question and concern that I'm hearing, is how that process is going to go through now, the fact that they're going to be online, they may come one day, and how that assessment at the end of the school year and how they go forward in assessing their grades and their meeting or not meeting their needs of expectations. So I'm not sure where that is in the line of the reporting out, but assessment is a big one I think we have to address.
It is a big one, and we're having ongoing discussions, and it's something we talk about on a weekly basis with all our secondary administrators so that we're all on the same page. We want to make sure we don't have one-offs and we don't have schools and have not schools. So we're trying to be united on this and make sure everyone's on the same page. The secondary administrators were meeting yesterday afternoon to come up with a plan and a formula that they can all feel comfortable with and all use, so that they can speak to their staff and have everybody on the same page for what the philosophy around assessment is going to look like. We certainly don't want to penalize students, but we also, it's a fine line because we also want to make them accountable for the work that they have been doing in these last 2 months and will be 3 months as we go into June.
So that's the up-to-date. We'll continue to use our social media through Mary's work to promote our plan. I will be on the radio Friday morning again, talking a little bit about our plans for Monday of next week. And I know our operations department, as Ian mentioned, will continue to work hard, and hopefully they don't have to work on the weekend to get everything completed. I know they're working really, really hard, as everyone is. I know our teachers are busy planning this return and what is it going to look like, and how do I balance and how do we juggle a combination of face-to-face and online. So we've got an incredible crew of employees who are working really, really hard to support our learners. So that's where we're at.
Thank you, Superintendent DeMayo. And thank you, Alan, and thank you, Jeff. Moving on now to our Secretary Treasurer and the 2020-2021 Annual Facilities Grant Spending Plan, briefing note on page 11.
Thank you, Chair. So we have a number of items tonight under my section that need to be approved. The first one being as you said, the 2021 Annual Facilities Grant Spending Plan. There is a briefing note included, as well as our ministry allocation and the spending plan template that we will be sending to the ministry. I'll just let Ian, who prepared the briefing note and the annual facility grant spending plan, just to provide any overview that he'd like to. But the board will be asking, as we do every year, we will be asking the board, as we do every year, to approve the spending plan, and then we will submit it to the ministry. So Ian, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I don't think so, Nicole. Thank you. I think the plan follows thematically what we've done in previous years, a little more than 25% into roofing. And then we try to touch on high priority, high need projects in a variety of schools in a prioritized way. And these monies are really helpful for us to keep ahead of the curve on ensuring that schools are functional and well maintained.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, so the recommendation, I'll read the recommendation first, seek a mover, seek a seconder, and then if anyone has anything to say or speak to or questions, etc., at that point, I'll ask for those. So the recommendation that the Board of Education approve the 2020-2021 Annual Facilities Grant Spending Plan as provided. Do I have a mover for that? Thank you, Trustee Frowley. Do I have a seconder? Oh, thank you very much, Trustee Waite. Okay, so it has been moved, it's been seconded. Anyone wish to speak to it? Michelle. Trustee Wade.
Sure. Thank you. So I have just a question. I'm pleased to see that there were some funds allocated for the sewage treatment plant improvements at Huban Elementary. I'm just wondering if this is the fix that we need. Is this a partial fix? I know that the district has put a huge amount of people power in trying to solve the issues with the treatment plant in Huban Elementary. Just wondering if we could be provided with a little bit more detail on that one.
Sure. It's a Trustee Wade, it's another piece of the fix. I think last year we really, over the course of the first probably 4 months of the year, we slayed most of the issues. And that was really a life cycle management and a replacement of a significant number of parts. This is a phase we need to do in the summer. What we're actually going to do is empty the whole system out, which has never happened in the last 20 years since the school's been open. And we're going to reconfigure the room. So we're going to remove all of the electronics and hardware from the walls. We're actually going to take the tank and float it onto casters and move it. And we're going to rebuild the walls in the room and cover them in stainless and then rewire everything. So I think that's the next piece for us in terms of having it as a safe and accessible workplace for our staff. It's been a pretty tough spot for people to have to go into work in. It's a bit of an insult to injury, you know, when you send somebody in and it's a really nasty space. So this is a complex. We thought we'd actually have to maybe remove the walls. And when we get a little more working room around the tank too, it'll be so much easier to maintain and it'll help us in our preventative maintenance plan going forward. I think the third piece is that we've hired a new independent contractor. The person we had for the last probably 15 years hadn't been keeping very up to date on the latest protocols and procedures. So we've hired I would say a younger, more knowledgeable, better educated, registered wastewater professional who has significant experience and is helping us. And that's been really good as well. So they've guided us in some of our actions. So I think this is a solid piece of the fix for us.
Great. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Anyone opposed to the recommendation? Seeing no one opposed, it is passed. On to the 2020-2021 annual budget and bylaw.
Thank you. So I've included a very brief briefing note in the package. Basically, our annual budget bylaw for the upcoming year, 2020-21, was prepared in accordance with public sector accounting standards. And this budget bylaw document that's attached to the briefing note incorporates the operating fund adjustments that were presented to the board on May 12th, 2020 at the Committee of the Whole meeting. As well, the budget bylaw template includes the preliminary budgets for our special purpose funds and for our capital fund. So the total budget bylaw amount for the 2021 fiscal year is $108,838,693. So you will see on page 19 of the package, it's the third page of the budget document. It includes the actual bylaw that we are passing hopefully this evening with 3 readings. The budget bylaw does require 3 readings, and it does need to be passed unanimously in order to be adopted. So the recommendations are included in the agenda. So we would be looking to pass the budget tonight with 3 readings.
Okay, so I will seek someone to read the first recommendation, please.
I can read it if you'd like. Trustee Howe.
Yeah.
Thank you, Trustee Howe. Please read, Trustee Howe.
That the Board of Education of School District Number 71, Comox Valley, 2020-2021 annual budget bylaw in the amount of 108,838,693 be read for the first time on the 26th day of May, 2020.
Anyone opposed? It passes. I need someone to read the second recommendation, please.
I'll read.
Thank you. Go ahead, Trustee Frowley.
That the school district number 71 Comox Valley annual budget bylaw 2020-2021 in the amount of $108,838,693 receive its second reading.
Anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, it passes. Third reading, and this is the one that has to be unanimous. Can I have someone read that one, please?
I will.
Thank you.
That the board unanimously agree to suspend the requirements of the School Act and the board's procedural bylaw to have the third reading of the annual budget bylaw 2020-2021 in the amount of $108,838,693 at a subsequent meeting.
Okay. Anyone opposed? And that one passes unanimously. The last one, please.
I'll read it.
Thank you.
That the school district number 71 Comox Valley annual budget bylaw 2020-2021 in the amount of $108,838,693 receive its third reading.
And anyone opposed? And that passes. We have our budget going forward for 2020-2021. Now, it is passed unanimously, and we're on to capital projects update briefing note, page 32.
I will let Ian speak to the briefing note. Again, he has provided an update on our capital projects. The information is there, but Ian, is there anything you want to add?
I think I just want to comment on our 2 mechanical upgrade projects. Really, really great results. They were just out to tender at our last board meeting. And you know, it's an unusual year. And we just had really incredible interest in both projects and super competitive pricing. So I think that contractors are trying to secure work, and it's worked in our favor. So we're going to get a lot done this summer. It's really positive.
Excellent. Okay, it's the recommendation that the Board of Education receive the capital projects update briefing note as provided.
I have a question, Ian.
Please.
I just was wondering if Ian had any comments on a number of the items that we had approved from our surplus. So they were one-off spending approvals from a plan passed earlier this year. And a lot of them haven't been spent. Is that just that they will be part of the summer program?
Trustee McDonald, we actually have spent the majority of the money. I think it's the way it's flowing through there. It doesn't necessarily represent too well. I think Candace will confirm that I've burned through quite a lot of cash. We have completed our $300,000 paving project. We're just about done our Aspen entrance renewal. We've spent the majority of our furniture money, all our technology money. We have a bit of timing issue on some of the vehicle support that we are getting, but I think we've just about spent it all, and it's been incredible for the schools and the benefit to the department. It's just been
well, I hope that's not the stuff that came by Amazon.
No.
But I just have a schedule to the end of March 31st, and there were a lot of expended at that point that were particularly from that project. But you know where you're at, and that's all good.
Well,
but,
we've done really well. I think one of the things that's super exciting in this is we've had an opportunity to pick up about $40,000 in lighting material, and the cost of LED tubes, ballasts, and panels has come down unbelievably. And when we're buying in bulk, so we're embarking on this long process of relamping all our hallways in schools and then transitioning into classrooms. And it's the kind of stuff we need to do to stay ahead of this significant plug load. So there's some really good things. Plus we got a boiler upgrade done and a DDC. So they're just wonderful projects that are really good for the school and really positive all around.
Well, I can tell how busy you've been, and thank you. And we're glad to have the Hornby project back on.
It's on track.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
Excellent. So, anyone opposed to this briefing note being as provided? Seeing none, we'll consider it passed. Financial update.
Thank you. So again, these reports mostly are the reports that would come through our finance committee or through our facilities committee. The financial update is provided every month, usually beginning in February once we have finalized our amended budget. So under the financial update, you have our operating fund projection as at April 30th. Not a lot has changed in the operating fund projection from the prior month. We are projecting about a $3.5 million surplus at the end of the year. And the explanations for any variances over 5% are included on the following page. And then we have our capital fund update as of April 30th. And again, Sheila, this is probably one of the reports you were just previously referring to, where you can see some items that were tagged under the board surplus spending plan with limited expenditures, but that's just the timing of the invoices as they're flowing through. By next month, a month later, you should see significant process on most of those spending projects. And that's it. We provide these reports each month, and happy to answer any questions.
You're muted.
I'll read the recommendation first, and then
questions. Questions.
Okay, questions first then. Trustee Janice Caton.
Okay. I saw Michelle's hand was up first, but I'll go first. So I have a couple of questions regarding our surplus and our balances. And this goes back to the COVID-19 funding and the COVID-19 monitoring that we're supposed to do on that one there. So we have extra costs that the Ministry of Education has asked school districts to monitor to determine how much money we are spending on the COVID-19 extras that we have to do, whether it's busing, whether it's busing, or whether it's janitorial and clerical and supplies and that. And I'm wondering how we're going to be going on next year if we're going to be in this COVID-19 on that one there. Where are we going to be with our, our surplus, and are we able to maintain a surplus and not claw back on some of our programs because of the extras that will occur on that one there? So I guess I am concerned about money for the next year. I'm also worried about the 1701, I think that's 1701 seat count in September that we will have to look at. If we're not in school, how we're going to monitor the money. So there's a lot of things that we talk about our expenses that I think we have to have more conversations on, but it's more the COVID-19 one is a big one for me, and how that money is going to be provided, and are we okay with there?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that question, Chair. And I talked a little bit about it at the Committee of the Whole meeting. So if you're talking about the current year, yes, we are being asked by the ministry to track our COVID-19 related expenses and savings. So there is a template that we've been provided with. We have provided all of our departments and programs that are currently being affected by COVID-19 with specific GL accounts to track their COVID-related expenditures. So we will be tracking those and reporting them to the ministry. We will also be tracking and reporting our savings. So there will be some savings achieved because of COVID-19, mostly around our replacement costs for teachers and support staff who over the last 3 months, we haven't been calling out replacements in the district, and that's a significant expenditure for us generally. So if you look at even the operating fund projection on the substitutes line, you'll see that we are projecting a significant underspend in our substitute budget because of COVID-19. We will see savings in our transportation contract with First Student because they weren't working for the last 3 months for us, although we continued to pay them some contractual amounts. There are some savings being achieved. So at this time, I believe our costs for this year will be offset by the savings that we're incurring. For next year, again, many districts don't know what to expect from next year. We are going to plan, and the impact of what we know was included in the budget, and I talked about that at the committee of the whole meeting. We know our international program will be affected by next year by COVID-19. So we will plan for what we know, and then my recommendation, as I said in previous, as it continues and as we learn more and as we experience more, if we think this is going to be an ongoing issue, it's something that we can look at next year in our preliminary budget. But yeah, I hope that answers your questions around those types of costs. We aren't expecting that the ministry is going to have any funds at all to support school districts. I think they're also assuming that the savings for this year will offset the costs. And next year, again, it's anybody's guess what it's going to look like, but we're going to continue with a status quo budget that includes what we do know, and we will address ongoing needs as we continue in September.
So just to follow up to that question, in my past many years as being a trustee, when school districts have savings for whatever reasons and the governments look at their budgets, there tends to be well, you've got the money, we don't need to support you in other ways. So I guess my concern is that because we had some savings with classes not being in session, buses not running, we've got some money sitting there. I am worried that the ministry is going to look at school district budgets and look at, hey, your surplus is pretty good. Therefore, we may not give you the money that you really need. And that's been my past experience with ministry budgets and ministries. Not saying that's going to happen, but I am really worried that the government doesn't have any money. Everyone's stretched. And this is going to be new uncharted territories we're looking at. So I am concerned, and I just want us to have those conversations and be concerned. And I know that BCSTA has said that the Ministry of Education is still moving forward with the funding formula review. To me, is why are we doing that when we don't know what's going to happen next year? There's a lot of unknowns, and I'm just worried that we're going to be in difficult times in the next little while.
Yeah, thank you, Janice. Secretary Treasurers have been on phone calls with the ministry on a regular basis, and that question always comes up. Are you, because you're asking us to track our savings and track our costs, a lot of Secretary Treasurers have likened it back to when the teachers were on strike, and we had the strike recovery account where, districts were asked to track their savings from the strike, and then the ministry clawed back funds. So Secretary Treasurers, when they hear the word track your savings around one specific issue, we immediately are concerned that the ministry is going to look at clawing back funds from us. They have assured us, and I've heard it myself, and all we can do is believe what they're telling us. But they have assured us there is no plan, no intent to claw back money this year. We didn't talk about future years, but there's no intent on the ministry's part to claw back funds this year. So we're constantly having those discussions as well.
Trustee Waite.
Thank you. And some of my questions or thoughts about questions were answered in that dialogue back and forth. So one of my questions has been answered. There's probably a good reason why we don't want a separate line that tracks where we're at in terms of pluses and minuses in terms of this one related expense, because we just wouldn't want to do that now that I know what can be done or has been done in the past. because to me that just seemed like a really simple solution for us rather than trying to find it all within the operating fund information. So I think you've answered the question, but when we do know what it is for this year, at the end of this year, will that help knowing that it may be apples that we were dealing with now and oranges in the fall in what we may be able to anticipate? Is that what, through the chair to the Secretary Treasurer, is that what your hope is?
That would be our hope, of course, extrapolated out across a full year. We only, of course, because we only have 3 months to work with. But yeah, if we end up in a situation in September where classes, in-class learning isn't taking place and we're back to providing online services, it could look very much the same as far as savings and replacement budgets, increased custodial equipment. It could look very much the same. It's going to be hard to say. I mean, the goal, as you've heard from the ministry, is to have kids back full time in schools in September. You would think that that would mean a status quo budget and status quo spending, but we do know that there will be some additional costs likely around increased cleaning costs and potential for more custodians. So yeah, it's going to be tough to predict what it's going to look like. And many districts, as we are not attempting to make those guesses. And then I've seen other districts that have built in, they've obviously had some additional funding and they've been able to build in some additional costs for next year. So I think the biggest hit for everyone is going to be through international programs next year. I think that's where everyone is going to really be struggling. So,
right. Thank you. And then just to sort of follow up on Trustee Caton and what our board chair has shared about questions, maybe that those concerns could be formulated in questions for the meeting with the minister, because we all just need to keep asking those hard questions everywhere we can, and maybe that's an opportunity for those questions to be submitted for that meeting that's coming up this week.
Okay. So the recommendation is still on the table here that the Board of Education receive the fiscal update for April 30th, 2020 as provided. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved Trustee Waite, seconded Trustee Caton. Anybody opposed? Seeing no opposition, it passes. On to Human Resources, Retirements, and Recognition.
Okay.
Trustee Frawley.
Yes, thank you. So I'm just looking off to my side here to read. So we have Brian Goodwin, principal at Arden Elementary School, who will retire effective July 31st, 2020, after 29 years of service with the district. We have Carrie Story, education assistant, Airport Elementary School, who will retire effective August 31st, 2020, after 18 years of service with the district. Joanne Gus, Senior Administrative Assistant, Cumberland Community School, will retire effective July 31st, 2020, after 40 years with the school district. And Steve Stanley, teacher at Mark R. Isfeld Secondary, who will retire effective June 30th, 2020, after 23 years of service with the district. And so that is for the board's information.
That's good. And the recommendation is that the Board of Education receive the retirements and recognition report as provided. Would you like to move that, Trustee Frawley?
I would, thank you.
Seconded, Trustee Hawksby. Thank you very much. On we go. No committee reports, no board business correspondence are there. So we're at now the question period for the public. Do we have any public questions, Josh?
There There are no questions.
Okay. Having seen no questions, having received no questions, my next is to move for an adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Thank you, Trustee Frowley. Seconder, Trustee Hawksby. All those in favor?